Hi everyone, and welcome to Mrs. Ross Does Math. Our lesson today is for Math 7. It is Lesson 6, and our topic is proportions. To begin with, as part of our notes, we're going to go over our essential question. And our essential question for this lesson is, what is a proportion and how can I solve them? We do have one important vocab word, and that is the word proportion. A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios or two fractions are equals to each other. Now, the key word there is equation and equals. Anytime we talk about an equation, it will have the equal sign. When we talk about an expression, it does not have an equal sign. So an equation equals, we solve it. So an example of our proportion could be if we had 1/2 is equals to 2/4. This would be an example of a proportion because these are two ratios, in this case two fractions, that are equal to each other. If I was to simplify 2/4, I'd get 1/2. So then it would be 1/2 equals 1/2. Now, proportions have something called equal cross products. So sometimes when we have a proportion, we're not going to be able to simplify our fractions. So when we can't simplify our fractions, we're going to go ahead and use something called cross products. So I have this proportion right here. 3/5 equals 12/20. Now 12/20, I could go through and simplify it, but it's going to save me a little bit of time if I use cross products. Cross products means I'm going to multiply numbers diagonally. So I'm going to go 3 times 20, and I'm going to set that equals to 5 times 12. Now, these two numbers, these two ratios, will be a proportion if they are equals to each other. So I'm going to go 3 times 20, that gives us 60, and I'm going to set that equals to 5 times 12, which is also 60. Because these two numbers equal each other, our answer is yes, it's a proportion. Okay. So once again, I'm using my cross products. Cross products means we multiply numbers diagonally. Okay, so again, I multiply my numbers diagonally, and if they are equals to each other, then yes, it's a proportion. Now my second example is this here. 1/3 equals 4/5. Now 1/3 is not a fraction that we can simplify, and 4/5 is also not a fraction that we can simplify. So because of that, once again, we're going to use our cross products. So I'm going to cross multiply 3 times 4, and I'm going to set that equals to 1 times 5. Now 3 times 4 is 12, 1 times 5 is 5. 12 is not equals to 5. So because it's not equals, I'm going to put a slash through my equal sign. That means 12 is not equals to 5. And in this case, we're going to get an unhappy face, and we're going to write, no, it's not a proportion. Now, if you have any questions still about this section, I'd highly recommend pausing and rewinding it to the place where you need to go in order to understand this concept. So once again, a proportion is an equation stating that two ratios or fractions are equal to each other, and we can find our proportions and determine if they are a proportion by cross-multiplying our numbers together. If the numbers are exactly the same on both sides, then our answer is yes, it's a proportion. If they are not the same on both sides, then our answer is no, it's not a proportion. Now, the second part of our essential question was, how can I solve them? So that's the next piece that we're going to focus on. And that leads me into our introduction down here. What about when a part of the ratio is missing? Now, when the part of a ratio is missing, we can solve still using cross products. So again, when one number is missing in a proportion, we can solve by using cross products. And again, our keyword here is solve by using cross products. Okay. So the example that we have to begin with today is this one here. 2/3 equals 4 over x. Now, here, my x is what I'm looking for. Okay? So our step one is we are going to use cross products and create an equation. Okay. So I'm going to use my cross products. So I'm going to go 3 times 4. And I'm going to set that equals to 2 times x. Now I'm going to simplify this, and I get 12 is equals to 2x. Now my step 2 is I'm going to solve for x and check my answer. So I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, leaving me with 6 is equals to x. Now, I'm going to circle my answer, and now now I need to check it. So to check my answer, we're going to just plug the 6 in where the x would be, meaning I'm going to have 2/3 equals 4 over 6. Now, I'm going to use those cross products again. 4 times 3 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12. My numbers are exactly the same, so therefore x is 6. Now, once again, if you have any further questions on this, please go back through, re-watch any portion of the video, leave me a comment down below, or send me a message through Remind, and I will happily go through and do some additional work for you. Now, before we close things up today, I'd like to go ahead and begin by answering our summary. Now, in this summary, I've given you what's called a sentence frame. I've given you a clue of how to start it, so this way we can answer our essential question. Our question for today is, a proportion is blank. Please tell me what a proportion is. And I can solve them by, please tell me how you can solve them. Now, for your assignment, you're going to be working on Lesson 6 worksheet. the Lesson 6 worksheet looks just like this. Okay. So yours will say Math 7, Lesson 6, write and solve proportions. So to begin with, if we're getting started with this assignment, we would begin by multiplying, again, 3 times 20 and 4 times x. Now, 3 times 20 gives me 60. So I'm going to put 60 is equals to 4x, because I'd go 4 times x. Now, I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides, leaving me with x is equals to 15. That is how we would solve problem number 1. Now, in this, I do not believe you will get any decimals. However, if you do, double check your answer. If you do not have an actual proportion, meaning your answer does not equal what is on the other side, when you plug the numbers in, something went wrong. Okay. When we take a look at number 10, number 10 asks us to determine whether each pair of ratios forms a proportion. So once again, this is still where we are going to go ahead and use our cross products. So I'm going to go 5 times 44, and I'm going to set that equals to 9 times 40. You are allowed to use a calculator on these, so don't be afraid to utilize a tool that's available to you. Now 5 times 44 is going to go ahead and give me 220, and 9 times 40, that's going to be 360. 220 is not the same as 360, so I'm going to put a slash through my equal sign. I'm going to write no, not a proportion. Okay. Now the very last section that we have here is numbers 13 through 15. 13 through 15 are some proportions in a phrase, and you're being asked to solve it. So, in this section, we have 3 feet in 1 second and 21 feet in x seconds. Since feet is the first piece of information we see, we're going to put that on top in our proportion, and seconds is going to go down below. Now that means that both sides of my ratio will have feet on top, seconds in the bottom. Now I first see 3 feet in 1 second, so I'm going to write 3 feet over 1 second. And I'm going to set that equals to 21 feet in x seconds. So once again, we're now going to go ahead and go through, cross multiply, and we're going to solve. So I'm going to go 3 times x, and I'm going to set that equals to 1 times 21. I'm only going to use the numbers here. I'm not going to use the words. Now 3 times x gives us 3x, and 1 times 21 gives us 21. We're going to divide by 3 on both sides, giving us x is equals to 7. Now x has the word seconds attached to it. So, since this is a word problem, we need words in our answer. So we would state there will be 7 seconds in 21 feet. This is how we would end our problem. Once again, if you have any questions at all, please contact me. Please rewatch this video. Please utilize any of the tools that are available to you. Thank you so very much for watching. This has been Mrs. Ross Does Math.